Hey everyone, my name is Dillon Gonzalez. I am the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast. And I am thrilled to be here with you once again for a brand new episode of No Streaming Required, a weekly video series where I talk all the latest and greatest in physical media. And I have a mammoth of an episode for you. I am here discussing all things Kino Lorber and Kino Lorber like subsidiaries. This is Kino Lorber Mania. I have a large back catalog, some of which I have watched probably almost close to 2 months ago, just due to scheduling. I haven't been able to talk about some of these titles. So because of that, I'm going to try to go through these as quickly as possible. If you want more of an involved deep dive, please make sure to check out GeekVibesNation.com in the week or so following the release of this episode. I will have physical or a written review of every single one of these releases where I go a little bit more in depth than I can on this video if I don't want to make it 5 hours long. But I am very excited to delve into as much as I can with these releases. And I'm going to start off with one of the ones I'm most excited about. This is one from Kino Classics with their collaboration with the Library of Congress. This is the Vitagraph Comedies. The Vitagraph Corporation, they released silent films early in the 1900s. And as you can see, this is a 3-disc set of some of those early silent shorts. This has both almost close, I'll just say over 9 hours of content, very close to 10 hours of content in this. And there's a lot of really fun things in here. These are, each disc is curated and you get a little introduction that ranges from about 4 to 13 minutes at the beginning of each disc of some of the people who brought all these shorts together and restored them, and to give a little bit of context to this era of silent era comedy and so who some of these forgotten stars is who are now being resurrected because of releases such as this one. So there are shorts that are as little as like 3 or 4 minutes and to almost like 30-minute long shorts in here. But as I said, over these 3 discs, you almost get 10 hours of content. And as they note in some of the newer interviews, not all of these are particularly like gut-bustingly funny, but they are historically important. But then there are also some very interesting and funny shorts. One of the very first short on the first disc is a very inventive short that uses special effects in really interesting ways, especially for being the silent era where through camera techniques you have a man like dissolving, trying to escape prison and like reforming in different like forms. It's very, very inventive. It's like 7 minutes long, but it's very, very cool. And that's just one of the multitude of shorts that are included on here that are very worth discovering. And yes, these have been restored, but these are films from like the 1910s or so forward. So not all of them are pristine by any means, but they have been lovingly restored and as much damage has been taken out as possible. This team has tried to reconstruct these to be the most complete versions of these possible. There are some shorts that do not have like the full arc of the story, but most of it is intact. But you can tell through some of the interviews that they collaborated with different restoration houses to try to get these as complete as possible. And it's a very, very admirable set. And on top of that, on top of just getting every single one of these shorts, you get them with a new audio commentary by film historian Anthony Slide. So that must have taken him almost 10 hours to record this on every single short. And then you also just have just like the normal audio track or silent, the music track as well. No other in-depth special features are included, but I think that's enough. Almost 10 hours of commentary is pretty impressive. And in addition to this 3-disc set, I think if you're a silent film fan, there's a lot of really good stuff here that you'll not want to pass up. It's just one of those things like cinema's first Nasty Women set that they released, Kino released a year or so ago. If you like that set, I think you'll like this one. But now I'm going to the world of full-length films, and this is one that I know is very highly anticipated. It is the 4K release of the Western classic High Noon with Gary Cooper, which was actually my first time watching this, which surprised me, but that's underneath the slipcover. So if you do want this slipcover, make sure to pick this up sooner rather than later, because after the first pressing, that will not be included. So you get a Blu-ray and 4K disc. The Blu-ray disc comes from the same 4K scan of the original 35 millimeter camera negative that the 4K uses. For those who don't know, like I said, it's the Oscar-winning Gary Cooper Western that it functions almost in real time. Gary Cooper plays a man who is just at the beginning of the movie getting married to his new bride, and then some outlaws ride into town looking for revenge, and everyone is waiting for this one train to come in, I believe, at noon. It is just a really interesting kind of microcosm of people like looking out for their own self-interest. Gary Cooper is this lawman who reluctantly is going to stay behind and face the oncoming onslaught of like bandits, and no one in the town wants to help him, no matter how many people he asks, just because they are afraid of this particular person who is coming to town. So it is more so a tale of just like mounting tension of wondering if anyone will spare their own personal safety in order to help the greater good. And it comes in a response to the era of like the blacklist and the Red Scare of this time. This was written in response to that, and I think it really works very effectively. In terms of the 4K of it all, I've never seen this before. I have no other Blu-ray release of this. It was previously released by Olive Films. So this, like as I said, it comes from a new 4K scan of the original 35 millimeter camera negative in Dolby Vision, and this is not my favorite Kino 4K. I think they have been starting to slack a little bit recently. I think they got a different encoding house to do their encoding, but I'm not sure if it's just that, because I know this is a Paramount licensed release. There are things about this transfer I think look very great. Some of the detail that is included looks very nice, the deep black levels and pretty nice highlights. What I'm not completely on board for is I don't think the grain looks completely natural. I'm not sure if there was any like smoothing going on, or maybe it is a problem with the encoding of some of the grain, not just, it just doesn't feel as natural or look as natural as I think about this period. It looks a bit too clean to me, and a little bit of artificiality to it. Now, if someone tells me in the comments that maybe this particular grain film stock that they were using is really fine and didn't have a lot of gritty texture, then I will retract my comments. But from what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing with this, I wasn't completely happy with how this looked in terms of like an authentically filmic appearance. But it does look very nice in certain respects, and it's far from a disaster. I just think that maybe with certain tools, maybe not used as aggressively, it could have looked a lot better and more authentic compared to other classic Westerns we've seen. The soundtrack sounds great. It's a classic score that this one has. It sounds good. I believe it's just the original DTS 2.0 audio. 2 commentary tracks and 6 featurettes that run 6 to 22 minutes long that get you a little bit more information about this. So High Noon, it's a really great movie. The 4K presentation I think will be divisive depending on if people feel like I do about the potential grain issue. My next is a more modern TV series, which I've talked about several times on this channel. We are getting close to the end. It is seasons 5 and 6 of Monk, the USA mystery series. It's a pretty straightforward series. Tony Shalhoub plays a obsessive compulsive detective. A brilliant Columbo-like detective with OCD, who kind of uses his power of observation to solve cases that no one else can solve. And he has a companion who follows him around and to help him out. In this case, in this point of this series, it is Natalie, and who continues along. This series, I really like it. It's just kind of a comfort watch of just like classic USA programming, which I used to really love. There are 8 seasons. This is season 5 and 6. I will be covering season 7, 8 in another month or two whenever those finish being released. But as it is, these 2 seasons are 16 episodes each. It's not peak Monk as like kind of the early seasons, but it's still very enjoyable. There's not a lot of shakeups until at the end of this, at the end of the 6th season going into the 7th season, there's a shakeup. But other than that, it's just kind of chugging along. Great mystery series, case of the week with a little bit of development with the personal growth from episode to episode. It's just great comfort watching. These Blu-ray sets from Kino have been treating us really well as Monk fans. This comes from a new restoration in 4K for these episodes. They all look very great. Nice natural audio. These seasons include a couple audio commentary tracks, some webisodes, some featurettes. If you've been collecting these, I see no reason to stop. These are both continuing in good quality. And if you've never seen the series, make sure to check it out, sample it. It's just a really charming series that I recommend. And if you like it, make sure to invest in these Blu-rays from Kino, because I have the old DVD sets as well, and these are a huge upgrade on Blu-ray. And I'm very excited to almost have the complete series ending here in a couple months. My next title is a newer title. It came out theatrically earlier this year, and that is The Invisible Fight. This is an Estonian film that mixes kind of punk, death metal, and martial arts. At the beginning of the film, our main character here witnesses some martial arts that at like a border wall where he is the only survivor, and it kind of like gets in his head of like wanting to kind of get into this discipline, and he ends up going to a monastery to learn, which sends him down a path of spirituality, but he is also like at heart like a kind of a death metal Metallica type person. And it's a clashing of culture of like the monks at the monastery not really believing that he's completely into his religious journey, while also him actually believing he's having a religious epiphany, and what kind of his journey along this. And like there is some martial arts stuff along the way with some just kind of antics that he gets into, and then there's some jealous monks that are distrustful of him, and this all is just kind of a confluence of narrative threads, which the execution is not as great as kind of like death metal monk like concept sounds, but it's still a very entertaining movie. It's good. It's just not as good as I was hoping it would be based on kind of the promise of the premise. But it is fun. It's worth a watch if the premise intrigues you. But I think it has such a great premise that I think it just kind of fails to live up to the hype, the personal hype I felt. But the Blu-ray is good. It has a solid HD transfer. It's a modern movie, so we expect as much. No real special features besides the trailer, but worth checking out if it sounds interesting to you. It's one of those quirky films that I just wish was just a little bit better. And another similar movie and similar sentiment is a title from Virgil Films, and that is Mad Props, a documentary about collecting movie props, which if you're watching this, you're a fan of movies, and the idea of owning some movie props is very exciting. And I like delving into like kind of subcultures, especially movie subcultures. This documentary is fine, but I did have some issues with it. I like whenever this documentary is kind of going into the act of like collecting movie props and why people love them, and exploring some of the actual props that people have collected as this director is going around and interviewing different people. And then you even get some stars like Lance Henriksen being interviewed, and like asked about kind of certain props and his experiences with like some of the franchises he's been involved with. That's all well and good. It's a perfectly serviceable talking heads documentary that's not doing too much, but it's fine. Where I kind of had an issue with this, there's just something inherently icky and kind of just off-putting about this director who we are following, this guy. He is just a extremely wealthy lawyer, I believe, who is buying these, like we're witnessing him bidding on these props that routinely go over $100,000. And just seeing someone so blatantly spending that amount of money that could buy almost a house for certain people just doesn't sit right with me. I understand that movie props go for a lot, but just seeing this man have so many and purchase so many and just like throwing out these bids like it's nothing, it just kind of rubs me the wrong way as someone who is like not super flush with cash to be dropping like $150,000 on Wilson from Castaway. I guess there's a little bit of jealousy to that, but also it just kind of reeks of just like elite. Like this is kind of the subculture where most of the people we're seeing has like fuck you money that they can just indulge in this. That's all cool, but it just, as a viewer, there's a little bit, it limits the enjoyment a little bit because it's hard for like just the common person to get into this if they're wanting like some really cool props. You can get some smaller things, but a lot of those people aren't interviewed. Some are, but not a lot aren't, and you just get a lot of the really kind of people who can afford to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. So that's my small criticism. Maybe others won't feel like I do and think that I'm just blowing this out of proportion. It just kind of made me feel wrong. But otherwise, Mad Props, whenever it's just focusing on props themselves and some of the talent involved, I think that's pretty cool. Otherwise, a little bit of a mixed bag for me. One title that I was very excited to delve into it's a follow-up to a title that we talked about on the Video Addict several months ago called Tales of Gimli Hospital. This is the follow-up from Guy Madden, Archangel. And this is quite a ride. It is a more accessible movie than Tales of Gimli Hospital. This is once again put out from Zeitgeist Films and Kino Lorber. The basics of this is it is a facsimile of a silent era film produced in like 1990, I believe. And it involves a bunch of people getting like different people getting amnesia, having people mistaken for long lost loves, and it devolves into like this triangle of two different people losing their memory and like kind of having to remember who loves one another, and all set in this kind of silent era European country, or this province in Canada, I actually believe. My mistake. But there's just like a lot of stuff going on that's like weird filmmaking from Guy Madden, but it's also very charming in a lot of ways, and just like a lot of the elements that he developed in Gimli Hospital, I think pay off in a more narratively rich way in Archangel, and I enjoyed it. I ended up enjoying it more, and it makes me eager to watch more Guy Madden movies because this one did appeal to me a little bit more than that previous one. Once again, his films are getting restored. This was restored in 4K. It's a 4K restoration. It looks very nice. Since this is like I said, a replication of like a silent era type movie, you do have like the small bits of like specks of damage and stuff in here. But this has been restored very well, and I think it looks as authentic as to how it's supposed to look, as it's ever going to look. This does come with an audio commentary from director Guy Madden, which is great. And no other special features, but that commentary is really good. My next films, I have a two like back-to-back from the same director. My first one, this is the debut from Nancy Savoca. This is True Love with Annabella Sciorra and Ron Eldard. This is an Italian family drama about these two right here, the two people I just mentioned, who have been engaged for a while, and they are finally getting down to like the last runway leading up to their wedding, and all the family drama that is going on of like wedding planning, but also at the same time the two are both kind of having an existential crisis of whether they actually want to get married, and some more than others. And what I really like about this is very authentic to life. It is not kind of like a rose-colored depiction. You are seeing this couple almost feeling like they're on a runaway train that they cannot get off. Like, will you be disappointing family? Will you be hurting this person that you've loved forever? And just kind of all the things that go into it. It's handled very well. And the ending is a little bit more ambiguous than I know at least my wife would like. But I think ultimately it ends where it's supposed to, and probably most effectively works out. What really, I think, drives this is the care from Savoca to keep these characters authentic and the family dynamic authentic, and all of this. It works very well. This Blu-ray, this is her debut. It is not noted as coming from a new restoration, but it does look very nice and clean and consistent. It has a perfectly solid audio commentary track. This has 4 interviews with crew members that range from 14 to 42 minutes long, including the music supervisor, editor, production manager, different people like that. Also a commentary from Savoca and her husband, Richard Guay, who was also the producer at the time. That commentary track has a little bit too much dead air for my liking, but overall it has some good stuff in it. But if you like kind of family dramas, especially Italian family dramas, this one's a pretty good one. This was her debut, and she followed it up with Dogfight, which also this month is getting a Criterion Collection release, which I have not seen and do not own yet. But then after that, after Dogfight, she had another movie, her third movie, which was Household Saints. So it is a good time to be a Nancy Savoca fan because all of her stuff's getting restored. So this is in collaboration with Milestone Films. It has Tracy Ullman, Vincent D'Onofrio, and Lily Taylor. Based on this cover art, I would say I thought Lily Taylor was going to be more of a part of this movie than she was, until she is a very important part of this movie. But once I saw the structure, I realized what this is, and it's basically a kind of a couple decades spanning drama. Once again, an Italian-American family set in the past, about a couple played by Vincent D'Onofrio and Tracy Ullman, who are kind of thrust together into marriage through means, i.e. a card game. But it's kind of their journey from being a couple who are kind of figuring things out, a young couple, and with Vincent D'Onofrio's very religious mother who is kind of meddling in their relationship, all the way to them eventually having a child who grows up to be the person played by Lily Taylor, who ends up being as religious as her grandmother, and kind of even some question whether maybe she has been like reincarnated from her grandmother. It's dealing with a little bit of mental health stuff and religion and family and just kind of how this all swirls together. It is a movie that I did not completely love while watching it, but once I finished it and kind of reflected on it in the days after I watched it, I started to grow more of an appreciation for it. And then I watched the special features, and my appreciation kept growing more and more. So I've actually turned around a little bit on it, and I do quite enjoy this movie. It is a really unique movie, especially with kind of how they play with kind of like absurd elements, and it's a very offbeat movie that you kind of have to get the rhythms of, based on my own experiences. But once you do, I think it is a very rewarding movie, and I can see why this has been given such a nice release. It's been given a new 4K restoration from Milestone. It's a great restoration. It has very crisp, clean picture, nice, consistent audio. And it comes with Savoca's 2 early student films, which run about 20 minutes long, 16 and 24 minutes long. They have also been restored to some extent. It looks very nice. It has a 58-minute making-of documentary, a new 20-minute interview with Savoca and Lily Taylor, which was filmed at the same time as their Dogfight interviews for Criterion. It was filmed at the Criterion headquarters. And then there's an an hour plus of archival interviews with different people as well. So tons of special features for this one and a really nice 4K restoration. So Household Saints is worth checking out. I think both it and True Love are about on par enjoyment-wise, but I like them both for different reasons. But this makes me extra anxious to check out Dogfight whenever I have a chance. But until then, I will continue along with my Kino Studio Classics titles. My first one is an interesting movie called Target with Gene Hackman and Matt Dillon. This is a spy drama where at the beginning of the film, Gene Hackman is just kind of like a seemingly boring dude who has married Matt Dillon's mom, and they've kind of been together for a little bit. They are going to celebrate an anniversary with a vacation. Hackman's character cannot go with her right away. He's going to meet her at their vacation spot, but before he can, he learns that she has been kidnapped while vacationing. So what we come to learn is Hackman is an ex-spy, and him and the Matt Dillon character go to track down his wife and Matt Dillon's mom. So it's kind of like this spy intrigue where they're starting to learn about each other on a more intimate level because this wall of secrecy is now coming down, and you're also fearing for this woman's safety, and all kinds of stuff's going on in this European trick. It works very well. It's a pretty solid spy thriller with some explosions and intrigue and like car chases, really fun car chase in this one that I really enjoyed. What really anchors this are the performances from Hackman and Dillon. It's not anything like mind-blowing, but in terms of spy thrillers, Target, it is a fun one. This one was not noted as coming from a new transfer, but yeah, it looks pretty nice. There's some lingering like specks of wear and tear here and there, but this I think comes from a really solid older source that holds up very well. Good audio as well, including a 5.1 and a 2.0 soundtrack. I think the 2.0 sounded a little bit more natural, but the 5.1 sounded good as well. This does come with a commentary track. Other than that, no real special features. That'll be a common refrain with a lot of these Kino Studio Classics titles. But Target, if you like spy thrillers, worth checking out. My next one is a weird one. Not as weird as some of them I'm going to talk about, which I'll get more into in a little bit, but this one's still pretty weird. The President's Analyst with James Coburn. It's a really solid psychedelic like precursor to like paranoia thrillers of the 1970s. James Coburn plays a analyst therapist who is kind of recruited to lighten the load of the President of the United States, because the President has so many things going on in his mind that his advisors think that he needs someone to talk to kind of so he won't kind of lose it and snap. Enter James Coburn. But being the secret keeper to the most important man in the country, at least, if not the world, brings with it its own kind of like issues. So you have people from other agencies and countries trying to kind of track him down and potentially get these secrets from him, or people potentially going to take him out in order to keep these secrets. All while never actually believe seeing the president, but it's all kind of like a hush-hush psychedelic trip where you will be very surprised by where this ends up, because I did not see this coming, and this is actually a little bit confusing on a first watch because there's a lot of like off-kilter editing choices where things are just kind of like thrown at you and you kind of had to acclimate very quickly, but it's a very deliberate choice, and I think artistically it works very well. It's a very unique movie, and it's one that I think will definitely reward on repeat viewings. I love James Coburn, and I think this is a really fun role for him. It's just kind of a man who he's thrust in this position where he's over his head, but he's just trying to survive, and where it leads him in this kind of paranoid way is very entertaining. This comes from a 4K scan of the 35mm original camera negative. It holds up very well. This has been very well maintained and cleaned up. Not a lot of lingering nicks and scratches. If anything, it's just really minor specks here and there. This does come with 2 commentary tracks that gives you a little bit more context as to what you were dealing with this movie, because I said it is a little bit confusing the first time watch. It wasn't widely accepted when and embraced when it was released. Culture has caught up to what this is laying down, and I think it is very much worth checking out if it sounds anything interesting to you, or if you kind of like paranoid thrillers of like a 3 Days of the Condor or Clute or anything like that. Worth checking out. Speaking of kind of like conspiracy-esque titles, we have The Lincoln Conspiracy, which is how it sounds. It's kind of like a speculative fiction telling of the Lincoln assassination and how, like, who potentially conspired to assassinate Lincoln, have John Wilkes Booth assassinate him, how this all came together, and just kind of who benefited from Lincoln being out of the picture. It's fun for what it is. It has a very made-for-TV quality, which, even though I've read that this did play in some theaters, I'm not sure how many, but it is very much made-for-TV-esque quality. It's just a good thing in my opinion. Like, there are very good made-for-TV movies. This just doesn't have a lot of like high production value or like high-class acting. It's just a very like solid watch. If this is what you're kind of looking for. And I was looking for it, so I had a good time with it. I believe this is, from what I've read, this has never been released on physical media before, so this is a huge upgrade for anyone who's ever wanted to watch this. Looks very nice on Blu-ray. It comes from a 2017 HD master that was prepared by Paramount. This was very nice looking transfer. I think it's very nice, consistent. It cleans up a lot of any damage that would have been associated with this, and it did not look like it had any kind of DNR or anything like that, like smoothing over details. It just looks quite nice. Even if it was created in 2017, holds up just as well. This has a commentary track, like I said, to give a little bit more of context to this, but other than that, no real special features. But if you like a made-for-TV vibe, Lincoln Conspiracy will do you right. It's more compelling than this kind of cheesy cover would lead you to believe, but it's a pretty fun one. My next one is a reissue. This is The Long Riders, which this came out originally in 2017. The only difference is this slipcover. This is the contents of the disc are all the same. This is actually a 2-disc set, the rare 2-disc set where we get a whole disc for special features in addition to the Blu-ray disc. Usually if you're getting 2 discs for a Kino release, it's because we're getting a 4K release, but no. Whole disc of special features in here. And this was an interesting watch because it's very much reminding me of my viewing of Young Guns earlier this year, because it does have to do with Jesse James and the James Younger gang and how all that unfolds. It's that tale, so I'm not going to go very deep into it. What makes this a little bit different is this is a Walter Hill film, so that automatically brings some level of entertainment and gravitas to it. He's a great director. The other thing is there's a lot of brothers in this story, and the hook for this one is a lot of real-life brothers played in this movie. So you have David Carradine, Keith Carradine, and Robert Carradine. You have James Keach and Stacy Keach. You have Dennis Quaid and Randy Quaid. You have Christopher Guest and Nicholas Guest. So the hook for this, real-life acting brothers coming in and playing brothers in the movie, which is fun. And once I realized what they were doing, I was like, all right, that's fun. As kind of like a, not quite neo-Western, but like more modern, like this was 1980s, like Western feel. It works well. It's an entertaining Western tale with like practical stuff going on. Walter Hill shoots this well. So entertaining movie. The transfer was a 2017 4K restoration. It still looks just as nice as whenever it first came out. I would love for this to get a 4K Ultra HD release. I think that would be very cool, but they did not do it upon this release. But it is back in print with a slipcover for now, and that whole disc of special features. But on the original disc, you get a commentary track from film historians, but then on the special features disc, you get a ton of special features, including a interview with the surviving Carradine brothers. So I believe that's Keith Carradine, and Robert Carradine. You also get the two Keach brothers, Stacy Keach and James Keach, who also produced the movie, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. You get the very rare Randy Quaid interview, as well as Nicholas Guest. Getting a Randy Quaid interview in relatively recent times, I believe this was 2017 whenever they interviewed him, considering his troubles with the law and everything, this is the most grounded I've ever seen Randy Quaid in any kind of context. But in this interview, he's very reverent of this experience, and I think it's very cool. And he tells a lot of really interesting stories, especially like his friendship with David Carradine and how that did not start off completely on the right foot. And that's just a very rewarding interview that I highly recommend checking out if you get this release. You also get tons of other special features, including a 64-minute making-of documentary, tons of special features, so I'm glad they did put that on its own disc so you didn't eat up all the bitrate, because the Blu-ray disc itself looks very nice because it's not overly compressed. So The Long Riders is worth it if you kind of like Western tales. Speaking of going to a spaghetti Western tale, we have Death Rides a Horse with Lee Van Cleef. This is kind of standard spaghetti Western stuff, revenge tale. Young boy sees his family get murdered when he's younger, grows up to get revenge right at the time whenever one of the people who was convicted of it falsely gets out of prison, and they both team up to go get the people who actually did it. Like I said, kind of standard stuff, but it's executed very well. If you're just kind of stepping your toe into spaghetti westerns, I think this works very well. Lee Van Cleef, he's excellent in this role, and there's some violent stuff in this, but not overly violent that would like turn off kind of a mainstream audience. But it works very well. It's has a Ennio Morricone score, which is I love a Morricone score, and this is one of the better ones. Most people are familiar with like the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns, like the Dollars trilogy or Once Upon a Time in the West or anything like that. It's okay to branch out a little bit, and Death Rides a Horse is worth doing so. Like The Long Riders, this is another re-release that is an exact copy of the one that came out in 2017, just now with a slipcover that looks very nice. This does come with a commentary track and an English and Italian audio, so this did not have any dialogue recorded on set, so everything is post-looped. So most of these actors are performing in English, so I mostly stuck with the English track, but the Italian track is there for those who like that for a spaghetti western. So worth checking out if you're a spaghetti western fan. Onto a newer release, one that is a very divisive film, but a very good release, is Brain Donors, which has John Turturro along with some other comedic performers, but he is the most prominent. This is one of the wackiest I've seen John Turturro, but I'm not hating it. This was kind of a bomb when it came out in 1992. This is basically trying to kind of revive the Marx Brother type of aesthetic. John Turturro is kind of like a fast-talking lawyer, like ambulance-chasing lawyer, who gets involved with this like very rich heiress who bequeaths some of her money to be overseen to like fund this ballet. He's supposed to oversee it. Some people fall into his orbit that are kind of like right-hand men, like there's like taxi driver and this other just random person who shows up, and all of them together are trying to kind of like get rich quick while also like trying to carry out the wishes of this older woman, and just like how this kind of conflicts with some of the people who actually are supposed to be getting this money. It's just a wacky screwball comedy, like I said, in the vein of Marx Brothers, like fast talking, double entendres. I liked it for what it was. I knew what I was getting into, and I knew I was getting into a very divisive film. But I ended up liking it for what it is. It's very funny, really good quick one-liners and wordplay, all that stuff. It's very good. So if you're into that, Brain Donors, it's not as bad as its reputation would have you to believe. And it has a really good release. This comes from a new 4K scan of the original 35mm camera negative. Very beautiful transfer, great sound as well. You get 2 commentary tracks to, like I said, give some context to this, which I always loved. I learned how this was a complete failure when it was originally coming out, but is now being kind of like reassessed. And the audio is 5.1 and sounds good. So good release from for a film that so long went overlooked. My next title, not the finest moment for Burt Reynolds, but an interesting moment. We have Rent-A-Cop with Liza Minnelli. So Burt Reynolds, Liza Minnelli teaming up, kind of a buddy cop-esque movie where Liza plays a hooker with a heart of gold who witnesses a massacre, and she's one of the only surviving witnesses. And Burt Reynolds is one of the cops who was on the case who got thrown off the force, and together he's going to protect her and kind of put away the bad guys who he let get away, and comedy ensues. Is this a great movie? No, it is not. Is it fun? I had fun with it. It was entertaining. I love Liza. She has a limited range, but she is fun for what she is doing, and I've been a fan ever since I was younger and first saw her on Arrested Development, and then got to go back and actually see before she was like in that type of mode, which is fantastic. I love her, but like it's interesting to see her in this role. They have good chemistry with one another, but it is just kind of like a goofy buddy cop-ish movie that's not great. But if you're a fan of either of them and you have like a little bit of patience for the quality, I think it's worth it. Maybe I was in a charitable mood whenever I watched this. It's fine. This comes from a 4K scan of the original 35mm camera negative. It actually looks really good. It's a good release from the Lionsgate deal with Kino Lorber. Kino, they love Burt Reynolds. They'll put out anything Burt Reynolds, and as evidenced by this. But they treat this one really well. This comes with an audio commentary track, which is also pretty fun. So Rent-A-Cop, pretty solid. My next one, going back some years to 1955, we have The Looters, which is a decent adventure drama and kind of psychological, like seeing the depths of like human depravity, because it involves at the beginning a plane crash, in which these two like adventurers go out to assess the damage of this plane crash and see if there's any survivors. They do find survivors. They also find $250,000 in cash, and how that immediately turns one of them into a sociopath. It turns into kind of this trek down the mountain where people turn up dead, and these people who were once friends begin to turn on one another, and all within this, the character of Julie Adams is kind of in the middle of stuff. Kind of a morality tale, but overall good. And it's a very spry hour and 27 minutes. So it goes by pretty quickly, has some good human drama, just like the failings of like greed and all that type of great thematic content. It works well. It's not a classic, but it's perfectly serviceable for that kind of narrative. This comes from a 2K scan of the 35mm fine grain. I say it looks good, not like fantastic. There's still quite a bit of like small nicks and scratches and damage and stuff, but overall it's been cleaned up pretty well. You get a commentary track, and the audio a little bit weak at sometimes, but overall it works more than it doesn't. There's just a little bit of variance here and there, but overall good. So yeah, The Looters, if you like adventure films or any of these like Rory Calhoun or Ray Danton, worth checking out, but not for everyone. I think my next one is like maybe one of the most not for everyone's of like what on its surface should be a pretty mainstream film. This is arguably my weirdest film. You can never tell, or you never can tell, gotta say it in the right words. I will try to boil this down to its pure essence. Think a little bit about A Wonderful Life, but with animals. It involves a, kind of. It involves a, at the beginning, a large fortune is bequeathed to a owner's beloved dog. It kind of puts a lot of heat on this dog because people are kind of wanting to like get this money that this dog has been bequeathed. In comes this man who claims to be an old pal of this dog, and then he ingratiates himself with the owner, the current owner of this dog, Peggy Dow. And this dog ends up dead. The Peggy Dow character becomes one of the #1 suspects, but this dog in the afterlife is granted a request to come back to Earth in human form, as played by Dick Powell. So Dick Powell is playing this canine as a human, and he is able to bring along a companion, this woman right here, who is a former racehorse. So this woman is a racehorse in the body of a woman. If that premise intrigues you, go for it. This movie is wild as hell, but I think it's a lot of fun for like animal antics inside human bodies. It's fun. It's wild, but it's just for its sheer uniqueness. I gotta recommend this film, but just because it's something. It's funny. Not for everyone, but it's funny, and I quite enjoyed it. This comes from a 2K scan and 35mm fine grain. Looks very nice. Some small things here and there, but overall pretty consistent transfer. This is from their Universal deal, and it holds up very nicely. This does come with a commentary track, and it kind of helps tell you how a movie like this got made. If you want something weird, you never can tell. It's worth checking out. I'm going to do my next two kind of in tandem with one another. So we got Fletch and Fletch Lives on Blu-ray. These are two films that were previously released by Universal on Blu-ray. Fletch, notoriously, is one of the weaker original Universal Blu-rays because it had a lot of digital manipulation. It made it look very inorganic, which we hate here. Fletch Lives was not as egregiously slathered in DNR from what I can tell. I don't own it, but from what I've read of reviews. But it was a made-on-demand, not burned, but made-on-demand disc that fetched a kind of a higher price point than I think a lot of people would have wanted, especially since I'm pretty sure it's pretty bare bones. These have each been given new 2K scans of the 35mm inner positives. This was very controversial when this was first released because people would think that classics with Chevy Chase would get 4K Ultra HD upgrades. That was not the case. It is just simply 2K, which is disappointing. I think these should have gotten 4K releases. Kino did not agree. But if you had the old Blu-ray of Fletch, which I do, you can tell still this is a huge improvement on that. So these are improvements. It's just not what all fans want, which is a 4K release. But these... Chevy Chase plays Fletch, who is a reporter who ends up going, in the first film, going undercover to kind of figure out a potential murder for hire plan and kind of track that down. Fletch Lives involves Fletch inheriting a property in Louisiana and getting kind of mixed up in whenever he goes there in this kind of like small town like conspiracy as well. It had been a long time since I had seen Fletch. I thought it was more in the vein of something like Airplane, which is more kooky and like gag driven. This is very funny, but it's also very kind of like straightforward detective noirish as well, but also very funny as well, with like lots of disguises for Chevy Chase and all that good stuff. Both of these movies I think are pretty good. I think people prefer Fletch more than Fletch Lives by quite a large margin. It wasn't quite as a large margin for me. I do think maybe Fletch is the more consistently funny movie, but I do like Fletch Lives for what it is. I especially like the change in location and the addition of Hal Holbrook. Overall, I think these are pretty funny movies. I don't hold them in as high of regard as certain fans, but I think they're solid comedies and backed up by interesting stories. Like I said, the 2K scans from the 35mm inner positives, they both give a nice, rich, organic appearance to these movies that they've been sorely lacking, but they look very nice. Both movies come with commentary tracks, and the first one has 27-minute making of featurette and a couple additional featurettes. There's a 7-minute making of featurette for Fletch Lives and a couple additional featurettes, like including like an interview with Chevy Chase, like on a talk show type panel. You get some special features and more importantly, organic looking transfers. Missed opportunity for 4K, but otherwise solid. Moving on to a more more modern title, which is still over 20 years old. This is a 1999 movie, The Minus Man, with Owen Wilson and Janine Garofalo, Brian Cox, Sheryl Crow. And I won't spoil what her role reminds me of, but there's another classic 90s horror thriller that her role kind of reminds me of. If you can guess it, drop it in the comments if you watch this movie. But The Minus Man is the rare Owen Wilson role where he plays a little bit more dramatic. It's not completely menacing, but this is the tale of a serial killer played by Owen Wilson who kind of like shows up, and it's a very low-key serial killer drama where he is knocking people off typically by poison, and he's kind of doing it because he needs to, but he's also kind of trying to pick people whose lives he thinks would be better if they were not living. And it's kind of more of a character-driven drama of how he rolls into town, kind of upends everyone's lives, and he's not constantly killing people, but whenever he does have that urge to kill, how that kind of impacts him and how he's kind of like viewing his life and everything. So it's a very interesting take on the serial killer drama because it's more really it's not quite Dexter-ish and like he is killing bad people, but it's a psychological analysis of a serial killer in that vein. And I think Owen Wilson is very good in that. I think it's cool that he kind of got this chance to do something that I think now would be considered against type. He's occasionally given the chance to a little bit spread his wings, but he's usually known for comedies, and this one I think works very well kind of earlier in his career. So Minus Man, it's a fun movie. Not fun's a weird word. It's an engaging movie that I think is worth checking out. This comes from a new 2K scan of the 35mm inner positive. It looks very, very nice. This comes from the Lionsgate deal. It's consistent, not a lot of like blemishes, like hardly at all. It's been cleaned up very well. It does come with an audio commentary track from the director and the producer, moderated by film historian Max Avery, and it also has some trailers. So commentary track to go along. It's a new commentary track, and you get some good insights into this one. My final 4K release, I have a couple more Blu-rays after this. The 4K release from Kino Classics is Andrei Tarkovsky's Nostalghia. Now, this was a movie I was very intimidated to watch because Tarkovsky is he's a very challenging filmmaker. Anyone who's seen any of his movies will know that. I've reviewed Mirror via the Criterion Collection in the past, and that took some patience and like some research to kind of make sure I understood completely what the hell is going on. I feel this is a little bit more straightforward, but still very artsy and stuff. It's about an artist who is in Italy, I believe, but he is from Russia. And throughout this kind of journey to kind of explore this person who is very important to influential to his art, he is kind of homesick for his Russian roots, and this manifests a lot in like different kind of visions and flashbacks. And the name of the game of any Tarkovsky movie is its visuals, and this is a very visually sumptuous movie. I think thematically there's a lot to engage with here. This is once again a movie that I'll probably have to kind of like explore a little bit more and like research and like. But what I got from it on a single viewing, I found very powerful. And this is known as one of the lesser Tarkovsky movies, but I think it's very solid. And in terms of this 4K presentation, like I said, this is a very rich visual movie. This is 4K, no Dolby Vision, no HDR at all. SDR in 4K, which it holds up very nicely. It's not going for like a Technicolor spectacle, but you do get very like accurate colors and deep colors, deep black levels. And I think for a movie of this length to have basically almost flawless compression helps this one out. So while I've seen a lot of people complain there's no high dynamic range on this disc, I think it is still a very worthy 4K disc. If you are a Tarkovsky fan, this has been given a new 4K restoration. I do not have the previous Blu-ray that Kino put out, but apparently it was god-awful and definitely the weakest Tarkovsky disc. So if you have that, I think you'll still want to upgrade. The Blu-ray is also given the new 4K restoration, along with all the special features, which I believe the Blu-ray is a little bit overly compressed because there's a lot of special features on there. So that does, you do have a commentary track, a 65-minute documentary, and then a 27-minute documentary, I believe with the director of photography. So if you're a Tarkovsky fan, the 4K of Nostalgia is worth it. Beautiful new 4K restoration, definitely worth checking out. My next title is Submarine Command. Generic title, but pretty decent movie where it is definitely dealing with kind of PTSD-esque symptoms of a captain who is forced to make a very harrowing decision early on in the movie and is kind of spending the rest of the movie kind of spiraling out from that decision and trying to kind of reclaim like his honor and like trying to make up for basically the sins that he believes him to have of the past. Overall, pretty solid psychological drama, not top tier, but perfectly serviceable. William Holden does a good job in the lead role. Don Taylor's also a good addition. I also like Nancy Olsen's performance quite a bit. This comes from a 4K scan from Paramount conducted in 2020. This is a scan that I feel maybe a little bit overly polished or clean. It didn't look similar to High Noon, but in a different way. This looked a little bit too clean for me. Either it had a very fine film stock or its grain was a little bit scrubbed by Paramount. But I don't know. Some people say a picture that's too clean looking is like a good thing. I just wanted to look organic. So a little bit of issues with that here, but overall still a good presentation, but might have some issues with natural looking film grain. Audio commentary was with this. Other than that, no special features going on. Similarly to Thunder in the East with Alan Ladd. This takes place in India, and it is about a gun runner who kind of goes to India right when it's kind of getting like a taste of independence, and he kind of gets involved with like there's like a rebel group coming in, and he gets involved with this blind woman, like English woman, who has kind of like grown up there and always loved the place, and there's like a romance, but also like this looming threat of rebels and this man facing his own morality of what his role in this should be. Like, he's trying to make money on this deal, but also he is potentially upsetting the peace of this country and all kind of the moral stuff that goes in with that. You also have Charles Boyer as a character who is like one of the members of kind of like the government who is trying to hold everything together. Serviceable, not fantastic, but serviceable. I like Alan Ladd. I especially like Deborah Kerr's performance. Yes, a person with sight depicting a person who's blind can be problematic, but they don't overly indulge in that kind of trope. But fine. This comes also from a 4K scan by Paramount, this time in 2022. This looks a little bit more natural. There's a bit more damage, like specks here and there. So I think they went a little bit more natural and left some specks here and there. But overall, I was pleased enough with Thunder in the East, video-wise, more than Submarine Command. Comes with a commentary track. Sound is passable, some weak spots, but overall it's okay. Getting to my final trio of titles, I have the Fritz Lang picture, Secret Beyond the Door. This is about a woman who gets involved, like goes on a trip, gets involved with a man, ends up marrying him, and then learns that he kind of has a mysterious past that draws him towards violent things, and there's a possibility he might be a killer, and she's trying to unveil like his secret past and just kind of what actually he did in the past, and whether or not she has made a grave mistake in marrying this person. No spoilers. But this actually ties in a little bit to my next movie, which I'll be talking about. But overall, it's a pretty decent, dramatic, thriller-esque. This is definitely one of the weakest Fritz Lang movies I've seen, and they say as much in the commentary track as well. But it's still passable, but if you're looking for like normal quality Fritz Lang, this is definitely a step down than what we normally get. It's a very messy movie, but it's okay. So this comes from a 4K scan from Paramount Pictures and conducted in 2022. Once again, I feel this might be a little bit overly clean. This just doesn't look completely natural at all times. More so than Submarine Command, but still, it just looks slightly off to me. Maybe a little bit too polished. It does come with an audio commentary track. Overall decent. But okay, so this one, Secret Beyond the Door, there are allusions to the Bluebeard killer, which actually is explored in much more depth in Bluebeard, which is a 1944 film, which I would say is one of the weaker things I'm talking about this week. It involves the Bluebeard killer is on the loose in London, I believe. I believe it's London. So yeah, and everyone is kind of advised by the public to not go out at night, and because this killer's on the loose and everything. But what you quickly soon learn, because the movie has no poker face, it pretty much choreographs that this man who is painting all these portraits for these women, after he paints their portraits, is killing them, and kind of how he is eventually going to be potentially taken down, or whether he will potentially be done in by love or what. So it's all kind of like this serial killer drama back in the like way olden days. I don't know, there's no tension to this. There's no like eventually getting to the serial killer aspect of it. It just really lacks like the pulse needed to like really make you invested in what this man is doing. Like, yes, you do see him strangling some women and stuff, but I don't know, there's just not real urgency behind it. Like, there's never a sense that he is just right about to get caught. So it just need a little bit of dramatic tension to keep things really fresh. In terms of this comes from a 2020 HD master from Paramount, a 4K scan. There's a ton of damage in this, so I'm surprised that they kind of released it as is, but at least it's being released, but there's quite a bit of damage, that more so than I was even expecting. So just be aware there's a lot of damage plaguing this, so this must have had really poor original elements to it. So audio track hangs out a little bit better. There are two audio commentary tracks with this. But one of the weaker viewing experiences and disc this week, but Bluebeard, if you've been waiting for it, it's now in HD. It's just not glorious HD. My final title is Starting Over, another Burt Reynolds movie with Jill Clayburgh and Candice Bergen. I love all these actors, especially Jill Clayburgh, who's kind of doing almost a flip of an unmarried woman character. This is kind of a flip of that whole thing where at the very beginning of the film, Burt Reynolds and Candice Bergen are getting divorced. Burt Reynolds is starting over, and he soon gets hooked up with Jill Clayburgh's character, who is a friend of his brother and sister-in-law's. Jill is more pragmatic and tries to kind of hold him off until he is more emotionally ready for a new relationship, but he kind of barrels forward to mixed results. So a lot of this is like him trying to figure out his emotional state. He's very anxiety riddled and like just very emotionally raw, at times wanting to get back with his ex-wife, but also falling in love with this new woman, and how this all kind of coalesces and stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I do not like. It's kind of dated in terms of how Burt treats some of these women. But overall, I think it is fairly well handled. This comes from a James L. Brooks script. And I think that kind of keeps things on like more of an even keel. The women really save this movie for me, just narratively. Burt does a good job, and I like that he is kind of being able to give a chance to be more gentle than normal. But overall, I think narratively, I'm more fascinated by these women, especially both women, Jill Clayburgh and Candice Bergen, were both nominated for Oscars. No Oscar nomination for Burt for this one, but both women I think deserved it. Neither of them won, but they both deserve the nomination. It's a charming movie. Overall, I liked it, even if I have some qualms with it. But yeah, it's worth checking out if you're interested in the premise, or like Burt Reynolds and want to see him in a more gentle viewing. So yes, that was a ton of titles, over 20 titles. I appreciate if you stuck with me this long. That was a lot of talking. I will make sure these videos are shorter in the future. I just had a huge backlog to get through, and I wanted to make sure to get all of these great titles out to you. So thank you so much for watching No Streaming Required. If you like what you've seen, share it around, comment, let me know what you want to see me discuss in the future. I really enjoyed the feedback that I've gotten ever since I went out on the solo outing. Make sure you're subscribed to the Geek Vibes Nation YouTube channel. But most importantly, just make sure to tune in again next week. But until next time, enjoy these movies.